So today I'm going to be talking about how to future-proof Tux, or why we need a content inventory system. I'm going to start with a quote here. Design is a plan for arranging elements in such a way as best to accomplish a particular purpose. And this is by Charles Eames, who designed this chair that some of you might recognize. And this quote encapsulates my mission for this talk. So just a quick agenda. I'm going to introduce the problem, define needs, outline the goals, do a system walkthrough, talk about constraints, and then I'll get to next steps. And I hope I can get all of this in a reasonable amount of time. Okay, so what is the current problem? Well, all of this got started because with my background as a writer, the first thing that I wanted to do after doing the initial product walkthrough for Tux was edit some copy. However, the copy only lived in this Figma text box, and there was no safe repository where the pictures, the words, and the structure of Tux could be edited, tracked, and connected to our design files. So before we even get to this point of creating content and designing wireframes for Tux, we have to research and ideate. And let me set the scene for those that might not be familiar with the process of creating content for Tux. This is our current content creation flow. And without going into too much detail about the individual tasks, as you can see, there are a ton of steps, and it's a pretty ad hoc approach. When I first came on board, it took me over 2 weeks to design only a handful of pages of content and questions, and I was inundated with the number of steps in the process, to say nothing of being able to communicate my designs to the engineering team. I think we can all safely say that this process was definitely not lean. So on to my next slide. So what are our needs? And another way of asking this is, what are our user needs? The user is us, the Tux content creators, designers, and engineers here at theCOOP. And ideally what we want to be is, this is us just banging out content so that we can create products that we can use to show in our portfolios to get a job. So what we need is a scalable, consistent way to automate the content production process so that we can have an effective, accurate communication chain between designers and engineers, so that we can spend less time doing busy work and more time creating products. What is the goal for a content inventory system? Well, first, simply, it's a place to organize and track content. Secondly, we want to build a place for future-friendly content. So what that means is that it anticipates the future user needs. It provides a scalable structure, and it's a navigational model that won't break no matter how much content we eventually have. Lastly, it's a way to bring meaning to our team. So it can be something that's ambitious, that motivates us to put in that extra effort to achieve high functionality. My vision is that this content inventory system is a thriving, living digital system that increases creativity for Tux content creators and bridges the information gap between designers and engineers. So here's what our content inventory system currently looks like. There are individual tabs for content in each question type, cells for every bit of information needed to build a page, as well as a home for the sidebar navigation and research sources. This document is extremely iterative. This is its third version, even though it says version 2 at the top, and it's definitely not the last. Fortunately, I've had the opportunity to test out this system while creating it with some of our target users, our content creators. So I want to give a shout out to my usability testers, Andrew, Roma, and Michelle, who have been flexible to evaluate the system while they've been creating content for Tux. So one win is that 100% of users tested, or 3 out of 3, thought that the spreadsheet helped them create content more easily because they were able to see the components required for each page, and it helped them more easily create that content because they had the information needed to visualize our content creation model. This is a recording of the Google Sheets Sync plugin, which is another solution I offered to our users to test. And by using the commands in the naming conventions of our Figma layers, the plugin allows you to connect data cells from a Google Sheet to media elements of a wireframe. There are some great functionality points to this plugin, and it does in some ways help solve our pain points, but there's a number of issues with it and with the system I've designed so far in general. So as you can see, that's what happens when you use the plugin. It takes all the information in. Okay, so what are our current constraints? First of all, after observing how the system works in practice, talking to some of our engineers and designers, and without going into all the details, the plugin is buggy. It demands a lot of manual labor and just to figure out how it works. And the more manual labor we're spending on the plugin and the spreadsheet, the greater chance there is of a disparity between information between team members. To that end, there is a major consideration about how we need to how we make changes and how they are communicated. So where does the parent information live? How will that be accessed between designers and engineers? What we as designers create in terms of content should be in the form exactly how engineers need to use that for deployment. Lastly, do we want to be reliant on outside products, right? So like the plugin in Google, for instance, the Google Sheet has to have a public viewable access share settings to work. And I wonder if that lack of privacy is going to impact us in the future. And is there a way that we can build a content inventory system internally? What are our next steps? Also meet my favorite meme of all time. So a content inventory system requires continuous monitoring and updating, and responsibilities will have to be shared. What we need is team buy-in so that we can have accountability for the system.
I'm ironing your shirt.
What? Oh. I didn't even touch on the other internal content creation systems that my team members have been working on, like Caitlin, Zoe, and John, nor have I had sufficient conversations with the engineers so that we are all as a team creating the architecture of this content model. So we're very much at the piloting stage here, but my goal is with our content inventory system is to scale and formally expand across all of Tux and the rest of COOP projects so that we can sustain, solidify, and optimize our content inventory system so that ultimately we're thriving and we're also innovating and we can see a return on the investment of our time. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing engineer feedback at this point. If anyone wants to see my references, here they are. And thank you so much for listening.